Good. Yeah, I don't need this.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep.
Okay, for our السلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم فقهنا في دينك وارزقنا العمل بما نتعلم واجعل ما نقوم به خالصا لوجهك وتقبله منا يا رب العالمين. أما بعد. O Allah, we have no knowledge except for what you have blessed us with. Indeed, you are the all-knowing. O Allah, bless us with what is beneficial and let us benefit what you have blessed us with and increase us in knowledge. O Allah, there's nothing easy except for what you have made easy, and you're the only one who makes every hardship easy, so make every hardship easy for us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. O Allah, bless us with the understanding of this deen and bless us with the implementation of this deen and make whatever we learn sincerely for your sake. Ameen, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Alright, so inshallah this is our second class in the Fiqh of Fasting from the Fiqh series that we started over here at RYC. And before we get into today's class, we would like to go over a quick revision of what we took last class. Right, so I'm going to ask questions inshallah, and we'll go from there. First we talked about the introductory points. We said we have 4 introductory points. We have the definition of Salah. What is the definition of Salah? Linguistically, to make dua. And Islamically, you're new, you're excused, but the rest? What is the linguistic definition of prayer? Come on, guys.
Connection.
Yes. Yes. Of what? Yes. I repeated it twice, so you have no excuse. An act of worship, it consists of specific acts and specific sayings, which starts by and ends by. Yes, so that's called takbir and taslim, right? It starts by takbir and ends by at-taslim. Then we talked about a brief history of praying. When was prayer prescribed? Which year? 8th year of Hijrah. What happened? Isra wal Mi'raj. What is the ruling of praying? What if someone leaves the 5 daily prayers? Does a person, just by leaving one prayer, leave the fold of Islam? How does a person leave the fold of Islam according to the school of thought, of the Hanbali school of thought? Completely. If they completely abandon praying, they are considered to be then we talked about the conditions. We talked about 2 conditions. We have the conditions for the person and we have the condition for the prayer. What are the conditions for the person? Muslim? No, purification is for the prayer. Baligh as adult?
And if it's a woman, she has to not be on her.
Yes, 4 conditions. Mentally sane, adult, Muslim, and not to be in her, for the sisters, not to be in her menstrual or postpartum period. And then we talked about the conditions for the prayer itself. What are the conditions for the prayer itself? Purification. Time. Intention. No, intention is not a condition. It is a condition. My bad. The condition, it's intention. Facing the Qibla. Covering of the body. Right. This was the conditions of the prayer. Then we talked about the timings of the prayer. We said we have to make this quick, right? When does Maghrib start? When the sun completely sets, or when the sun starts to set? No, when the sun completely sets. When the sun completely sets, right? When the shape of the sun completely goes away. When does the time of Maghrib end?
The fading of the sunset
Afterglow. And when does the time of Isha start?
right when it's light.
Okay, when does it end? You have the preferred time and you have the time of necessity. When does the preferred time end?
The first Thursday night.
And another opinion?
From Maghrib to dawn.
No. To midnight. Till midnight. And the time of necessity is from that time till? Till Fajr. When does the time of Fajr start?
When the glow comes.
The break of dawn. All right, when does the time of Fajr end?
When the sun rises.
The sun completely rises, when the sun starts to rise? Starts to rise. Right? The shape of sun starts to rise. When does the time of Dhuhr start? The passes the zenith, not when it's at the zenith, right? When it passes the zenith. When does the time of Dhuhr end?
When an object shadow
Is equal to its length. Okay, when does the time of Asr start?
when it's equal to its length.
When does the preferred time end?
The shadow of the object is twice less.
When does the time of necessity end? When is Maghrib? Sunset. Alhamdulillah. Asr? Sure. Yes. The Hanafi school says the time of Dhuhr ends at when the sun is equal to twice its length. Yes. I think they don't have the preferred and prescribed time. So for them, it's from that time till sunset. I'm not sure, but I think that's the case. Then we talked about the 5 times where praying is prohibited. First time? When the sun is rising. No, that's not the first time. That's a time of prohibition, but I want an order.
Okay, the sun is setting.
No. Okay, let's start by sun is setting. Okay, sun is setting, then? No, even that's not the first time.
After Fajr.
After Fajr?
After the Fajr prayer.
Until?
Until sunrise.
The sun, the shape completely, or the completely?
No, any shape. When
Any shape?
you see the shape of the sun.
When the shape of the sun starts to rise, right? And then the second time is?
Sunrise till sunrise till the sun has risen to the height of the spear.
Yes, the height of a spear. How many minutes is that we said? 15 minutes, right? And then the second time is? Third time, sorry?
When Asr. After Asr prayer,
Until?
the sun is completely set.
No, until the sun starts to set. And then the fourth time is?
When the sun is setting.
When the sun is setting itself. And we explained what's the difference, right? What is the difference? Why did this ulama differentiate?
The smaller time frames are more strict.
Yes. And the other times are? Yeah, so what is the consequence of that? What prayers are we allowed to pray in the strict times, or we're not allowed to pray in the lenient times, or vice versa? We said one prayer that we are not allowed to pray at those 6 strict times. Janazah. So janazah we can pray at the strict times, but we can pray in the lenient times, right? And there's one more. There are 2 more times, but one more from the 5. There are 1 more left, which is when the sun is at its zenith. When the sun is completely at its zenith, that's the time of prohibition, a strict time of prohibition. And there's 1 more time we mentioned after that. From the adhan of Fajr until the performing of the prayer, right? And the only prayer that is accepted from the time of prohibition is? I need you guys to depict and imagine it. Yes, the sunnah before Fajr. Then we talked about the adhan. We'll not go into the adhan. Then we'll talk about covering the body. What is the what is mandatory for the men to cover? From the navel to the knee. And what about the sisters?
Everything except for the hand and the
Face.
You said there's a difference in opinion about whether the feet are allowed?
Yes, the Hanafi school of thought says that the feet are not mandatory to cover. Then we talked about facing the Qibla. If we're close to the Qibla, how?
Face the actual Qibla.
And if you're far away,
The
general direction. Then we talked about the intention, and then we talked about the pillars of the prayer. Right? Let's go from in the order. How many pillars are there, first of all?
There's 14.
14. Let's go in the order. Standing up.
First takbirah.
Oh, let someone else do it as well. Any other takbir? Anyone else? Fatiha. Let's go in the order. Ruku. Rising up ruku. Straightening yourself after ruku. Then sujood. Sitting between sujood. Which tashahhud? That's tashahhud. Then Salah Ibrahimi, and we said two more. No, there are two more. The salam, yeah, there are three more. Sorry, salam and
completing each and every component.
yes, and in order, right?
The 7 points.
Okay, when he said sujood, so that means sujood on the 7 body parts. Do you get it?
Sorry, after the last tashahhud, you said sitting for the last tashahhud.
Clear? Any questions about the previous class? Move on. Bismillah.
One of the pillars, I don't know, we mentioned the fulfilling each pillar with tranquility.
Yes, so we said meaning that you give enough time for you to read the prescribed or the obligatory saying for that act. So for example, when you're ruku', what is the obligatory thing to say? Subhana Rabbil Azim once. That's the minimum requirement, right? So you give your time enough time to say that prescribed saying. Right? So let's say saying Subhana Rabbil Azim takes you 5 seconds, right? So you need to stay in ruku' for 5 seconds.
You said about the taslim, you said saying Assalamu alaikum is not enough. You have to say Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum wa rahmatullah, yes.
This is one specifically about last class, but when you're in ruku', I heard a hadith that the longer you stay, the more of the sins that fall off.
Yeah, so we're just saying what makes your prayer valid. Then we have, inshallah, we'll come to the issue how could you maximize and what are the preferred acts, inshallah. Questions? All right. Zubair? It's not working? Okay, alhamdulillah. Perfect. So today, inshallah, we'll be taking the obligations, the recommended acts, the permissible acts, the disliked acts, and the nullifiers. The things that nullify and the things that are prohibited for a person who's praying, that nullify his prayer, inshallah. The first thing is the obligations. Now, what was the difference that we mentioned between the obligations and the pillars? Come on, Rizwan.
Without a pillar, your salah is invalid. Right?
Okay. And without an obligation?
It's sinful.
No.
You could do sujood.
Yes, so you can make up if you missed an obligation forgetfully, not intentionally. Intentionally, both are invalid, right? But forgetfully, if you leave an obligation, then you can make up for that with sujood sahw. But for the pillar, you have to come up and perform that exact pillar, and then you have to also do sujood sahw. We'll come to that, but just want to make sure that you guys understood and remembered the difference between the pillar and the obligations, right? So the first obligation is the takbirat, except for the takbirah for ihram. What is the takbirah for ihram? Yeah, that's the first takbirah. Ihram comes from the word haram, meaning you enter a state where many things become haram upon you, right? So when you start your prayer, it is haram for you to move a lot, it's haram for you to eat and drink, it's haram for you to sway away from the qibla, right? So that's what it's called takbirat al-ihram, right? That's the first takbirah. That is a pillar that we took in the last class. The other takbirat, meaning going into ruku', coming up from ruku', going to sujood, coming up from sujood. All those takbirat are considered obligations, right? They're considered obligations, right? How many takbirat do we have? Let's count. In one rak'ah, you go into sujood, that's one. You rise up from sujood, that's two. No, rising up from sujood is not takbir, sorry. You're going to sujood, one takbir. Getting up, one takbir. Going back into sujood, one takbir. And rising from sujood. 5 takbirat in each rak'ah, right? Okay, we'll come to that later. Saying Sami Allahu liman hamida, except for the person who is being led, meaning a person who's praying behind the imam. So saying Sami Allahu liman hamida is an obligation for 2 people. So a person who's praying is one of 3. He's either praying by himself, or he's either an imam, or he's either praying behind an imam, right? So for the first 2, meaning who is praying by himself or who is the imam, it is an obligation for them to say Sami Allahu liman hamida. As for the person who is praying behind the imam, he does not say Sami Allahu liman hamida. It is not even recommended for him to say Sami Allahu liman hamida. What does he say? Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Right? There are 4 main versions how to say that dua. There is Rabbana wa lakal hamd, Rabbana lakal hamd, Allahumma Rabbana lakal hamd, Allahumma Rabbana walakal hamd. All 4 have been mentioned in the books of hadith, right? So you have for any one of them. This is the least mandatory. This is we'll come to that inshallah. This is the least mandatory to say. Whatever you say after that is a sunnah. So some people will say Rabbana walakal hamd hamdan kathiran tayyiban mubarakan fi mil as-samawati wa mil al-ardi wa mil ma bainahun. This is mandatory. But if you say Rabbana walakal hamd or Rabbana lakal hamd, that is enough for you to fulfill the obligations. Then praising Allah after standing up from the ruku, what we said, saying Rabbana wa lakal hamd. That's the 3rd obligation. The 4th is the dhikr for ruku. And a person, when he goes into ruku, okay, I think that was the dhikr for ruku should come before the praising Allah, right? So the dhikr for ruku, what's the dhikr for ruku? Subhan Rabbil Azim. The minimum amount of times you have to say Subhan Rabbil Azim is once. The preferred time is 3. And the more preferred amount is 10. Saying 10 times is the most preferred amount to say the dhikr for ruku'. Same goes for sujood. Right? I think it should start by the takbir, then dhikr for ruku', then saying Sami Allahu liman hamida, and then praising Allah, standing up from ruku'. So the order is kind of wrong over here. Then you have the dhikr for sujood. What is the dhikr for sujood? Subhana Rabbil A'la. What is the minimum amount of times you have to say it? The preferred time? 3. And the more preferred time amount is 10. Right? Yes. Then you have asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness between both prostrations. So when you sit between the both, what is the ruling of sitting between the both prostrations? Sajdas?
Sitting?
Yeah. Pillar, right? Sitting between the 2 sajdas is considered a pillar. Saying the dua, which is Rabbi ighfirli warhamni wajburni wa'afini, that is an obligation. The minimum amount, the minimum saying you have to say is Rabbi ighfirli. If you say that, that is enough. But if you say, like if you could do the whole dua, that is preferred, meaning saying Rabbi ighfirli warhamni wajburni wa'afini to the end of the dua, that is preferred. But if someone says Rabbi ighfirli, that is enough for him to fulfill the obligation. Then you have the first tashahhud. You have the first tashahhud. What is the ruling of the second tashahhud?
If you're praying 2 rakahs?
Let's say you're praying 4 rakahs.
Second one is a pillar.
A pillar, right? The first one is obligation. Okay, what if you're praying 2 rakahs?
The last one.
Yes, so it's the last one is, so we say the first one you have more than 2 rakahs, meaning 3 or 4. And when we say last, it's for the 2 or 4. Was that clear? Okay, so you're either praying 2 rakahs or you're praying more than 2 rakahs, right? If you're praying 2 rakahs, the tashahhud that you say before giving salam, that is considered a pillar, not an obligation, right? Pillar it's a higher level than obligation. But if you're praying more than 2 rakahs, then saying that tashahhud is an obligation. Meaning if you forgetfully forget it, and then you can make it up for the by sujood sahw. Was that clear?
Is it just the first, or is any?
This is the first when other than the 2 rakahs.
Let's say you're praying 4 rakahs.
Yes. So
the second or the third. The second.
So the first one is which comes in the second rakah, which does not follow up by a salam. To make it easier, which does not end by salam, right? This is the criteria for first tashahhud to be obligatory, that it is not, salam is not preceded by it.
So, when you say the first tashahhud, you mean first section? Alhamdulillah, salawat tayyibat, or the whole thing?
That's called Salah Ibrahimiyya, right? The other thing. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, that's what you meaning?
No, the first section.
Yeah, so you have at-tashahhud, which is at-tahiyyatu lillah wa salawatu wa tayyibat, assalamu alayka ya nabiyyu rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillah salihin, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu rasul. This is the tashahhud, right? This is what we're talking about, the entire thing.
So if I'm doing 2 rakahs,
yes.
This first tashahhud is...
This is not the first tashahhud.
I'm doing
This is, it will be the last tashahhud.
Okay.
Oh.
Oh, yeah,
Okay?
But it's only a first tashahhud.
So for the tashahhud to be a pillar, it has to be followed up by salam. If it's not followed up by salam, then it is an obligation. You know when the fruit for this comes? And when you're praying behind an imam and you've missed rakahs. Let's say you're praying behind an imam and he's praying Isha, and you're also praying Isha, but you missed 2 rakahs. And you enter when he's praying his 3rd rakah, right? Right? And you sit in tashahhud, and it is his last tashahhud for him, and it's your first tashahhud. So do you read Salah Ibrahimi or do you don't? Or is that an obligation for you or a pillar? So the scholars say, if for you it's an obligation, for the imam it's a pillar. Because you are not ending your prayer over here. It is not followed up by a salam. So for the tashahhud to be a pillar, it has to be followed up by a salam.
What if you join prayer during the Maghrib prayer after 1 rakah? So you have to pray tashahhud?
No, sorry?
So you have to pray tashahhud.
Good question. So if a person joins the imam in the 2nd rakah in his tashahhud, right? How many tashahhuds will he pray? How many tashahhuds will he say? 4. He will do tashahhud 4 times. Right? So focus with me, right? He entered with the imam in his 2nd rakah, and he sat with him in tashahhud, right? What rakah is this for him? 0. Exactly, 0. This is not his first rakah. So he read 1 tashahhud with the imam. He stands up with the imam, which is which rakah is for the imam? The 3rd. Which rakah is for the person? First. He reads a tashahhud in that as well, right? Then the imam gives a salam, he stands up, and then he prays his 2nd rakah. He does a tashahhud. And then in his 3rd rakah, he does a tashahhud. So he does 4 tashahhuds, but the first 3 are obligations, the last is a pillar. You get it? Interesting? Sure. Yeah.
So praising Allah from standing up after ruku, is that...
The Rabbana wa lakal hamd. That's the Rabbana wa lakal.
What about is there a difference between the imam and the person praying behind?
No, everyone has to say. Everyone has to say. The difference is when saying Sami Allahu liman hamid.
I was wondering if
Yeah. And the issue comes, when should the person praying behind the imam say Rabbana wa lakal hamd, right? Because the hadith says that when the imam says Sami Allahu liman hamida, you should say Rabbana wa lakal hamd. When does the imam say Sami Allahu liman hamida? While he's rising up, not when he stood up, right? So when should you say Sami Allahu liman hamida? When you're rising with the imam, or when you're stood up, right? Because the hadith says when he says Sami Allahu liman hamida, you should say Rabbana wa lakal hamd, right? So there's a difference of opinion. Both opinions it's very flexible. Any opinion is valid. Some scholars say that you should say it while you're standing up, and some say when you're completely stood up. Is that clear?
police will have a specific one.
Yes, they say when you're rising up.
So if you're relaying the voice of Imam by saying it loudly, he doesn't have a microphone.
Yes.
So that person also says Rabbana wa lakal hamd.
Yes.
So that has to happen after.
Yes. Yes, he can do it with him. It's fine because he's relaying the voice, and that's something that's mentioned in the books of fiqh, that a person should. It's recommended for him to do that if there's if there's a large congregation and the people in the end cannot hear him. But if the people can hear him, then it's disliked for him to raise his voice over the voice of the imam. Was that clear? Right. And we have the last obligation, which is sitting for the tashahhud. The first tashahhud, sorry. What is the criteria for first tashahhud?
Islam does not mention.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not followed up by a salam. Any questions on obligations? Sure.
So when you're praying before the time, you said first tashahhud is not followed by the salam.
Yes.
Do we pray?
No, you don't. No, it is not even a sunnah for you to pray. Right. Sure.
If you know someone who's forgotten to do like one of those,
Yeah.
but they didn't know it at the time,
Yeah.
like they have to. I mean, how do you make up? You have to redo it.
We'll talk about it in the mistake side. The mistakes, I need to explain it very precisely so that it will be understood. If I start talking about mistakes now, you guys will get confused, right? So it's very precise, inshallah. We have an entire slides full of diagrams, and we'll talk about that, inshallah. Any questions? Moving on? Okay, we have done with obligations, right? Okay, what about raising your hands for the takbir? That's a sunnah. Saying Allahu Akbar is an obligation, but raising your hands is a sunnah. We'll come to raising hands in other places as well. Then you have the recommended acts, which there are many recommended acts. We're only going to mention a few, and inshallah next class when we do a practical example of how to pray, we'll try to elaborate on many more of the recommended acts. So you have actions which are recommended to do. The first is placing the right hand over the left. Placing the right hand over the left, right? And where should a person place his hands? Chest, navel, below navel?
Lots of different opinions.
Okay. Yes, okay. So the way you grab your hand is the Hanbali school of thought says that you take your right hand, and you place it on the end of your wrist. You grab it, right? And you place it below your navel, right? Below your navel. Placing your hands below the navel is the chosen opinion from all four schools of thought. There are other opinions from the other schools of thought, but the chosen opinion from four schools of thought is that you place it below your navel, right? The Shafi'i schools of thought have a big difference of opinion where some say over your navel and some say below your navel, right? Hanbali school of thought dislikes placing your hands on your chest. Dislikes. It's considered to be disliked, right? So the Hanbali school of thought goes with the opinion that you grab your hand this way, right? And you place it below your navel. And that's how, because there's no explicit authentic hadith where someone described how the Prophet ﷺ placed his hands, or the Prophet ﷺ himself told us how to place the hands, right? There's one weak hadith that majority of the schools of thought place their opinions on, which is narrated by Ali radiallahu anhu, where he says that it is from the sunnah to place your hands below the navel, right? Both opinions are valid. You can put your hands on your chest. Some people feel more comfortable over here. Some people feel more comfortable. What about if you pray like this? Prayer valid or not?
Valid.
Valid. Why? Recommended acts. The Maliki school of thought go with the opinion that you keep your hands straight. It's called isdal. It's called isdal in Arabic, right? That you keep your hands straight when you're praying. The reason for that, they choose the opinion because Imam Malik would not raise his hands. And some Malikis have refuted that opinion, saying that the reason why Imam Malik could not raise his hands because he was beaten up by the governor of that time to the point that both of his hands were paralyzed, or he couldn't feel them. Right? He was beaten so severely that he couldn't feel his hands, and that's why he couldn't even raise his hands. That's why they say that.
You said the preferred opinion of all schools of thought is this way, beneath the navel.
Yeah, so except for, I should have rephrased that it's not to place on the chest.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, good point. For keeping your hands straight? Isdal. If you want in Arabic, I can write it for you. I'll write for you. In Arabic is called Isdal. Right? It's clear? Can you see it?
What's the proof of the Malikis to say that you don't raise your navel?
So they follow their Imam Malik. The way four schools of thought work is that they follow the Imam. So they say that our Imam knows the correct opinion because he is the most knowledgeable person that they had at that time, and they follow that Imam. So for sure. For sure that he had proof for that.
No one asked him, no one questioned or learned?
So the Malikis differ a lot. Malikis in general is a very complicated school of thought. Any questions? Going on, inshallah. Raising the hands when the takbir for ruku'ah, right? The takbir for ruku'ah, when going to ruku'ah, I think we should start with the other one. Sorry. So we should start with the one on the right. The takbir for ihram, meaning the first takbir that we mentioned that last class. That saying Allahu Akbar for takbirat al-ihram is what? Is a pillar. But raising your hands is a sunnah, right? Then the second one is takbir for ruku'ah, meaning when you go into ruku'ah, is that when you it's also a sunnah to raise your hands when going into okay. So to what extent do you raise your hands? Right? So the Hanbali school of thought says you raise it till your shoulders, right? To your shoulders. And some schools of thought go to your ears, but parallel to your ears. The Hanafi school of thought goes with the opinion that you touch your earlobes, right? All three are valid, right? If a person raises his hands anywhere, it's valid, right? If a person doesn't even raise his hands, it's still fine, right? Because at the end, it's recommended. So
So your salah isn't less or anything?
it's less, definitely less, but it's valid, right? What I mean by this, many people have a fuss and an argument about this. Like, okay, why aren't you raising your hands this way, this way? At the end of the day, there's no explicit cut hadith in this issue. The Sahaba described how the Prophet ﷺ raised his hands, and they differed in the way how they described. Some said to the shoulders, some said to the ears. So it depended on how they saw the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ could have raised his hands like that, and some said that he raised it to his ears, and some said his shoulders, even though it's the same place, right? So just the way how they perceived and described it. So the reason I mentioned it's a sunnah that your prayer does not hang on this issue. Meaning there's no point of having a big discussion and a big argument whether you should have it to here, touch the earlobes. It's fine. All are valid opinions in the fiqh, in our fiqh. The third time is rising up from ruku'ah. Right? When you rise up from ruku'ah, you raise your hands. Right? There's one more. Okay. There's one more place where you see some people raise their hands. Where is that? Tashahhud, yeah. Some people, when they rise up from their first tashahhud, they raise their hands. There's a hadith in Bukhari where the Prophet, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu mentions that the Prophet ﷺ used to raise his hands after the first tashahhud, but the Hanbali school of thought doesn't choose that opinion. It says that it's permissible. It's not recommended, it's permissible. If a person wants to raise his hands, he could. If he doesn't, he should, it's okay. Right? So you don't consider it as to be as strong to be recommended. Clear? Another action is raising the index finger when the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned. They say that is a sunnah. Whenever you're reading Quran, if the Imam says the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you lift your finger in just to as a manifestation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. Yeah, it's.
Is there any,
Do you mean tashahhud or?
oh, sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant. But.
Yeah, this is what is okay. Sorry, I think I misunderstood this. It's when tashahhud happens. It's when tashahhud happens. You say whenever you're reading tashahhud, whenever the name of Allah subhanahu wa taala comes, you raise your finger. This Hanbali school of thought goes with the opinion that when you have your hand in tashahhud, right, and when the name of Allah, you keep your finger low until when the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes. How many times the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes in the tashahhud? 4 times, right? At-tahiyatu lillahi was-salawatu wat-tayyibatu was-salamu alayka wa-salamu alayka wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi as-salihin. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Other schools of thought go with the opinion that you keep it firm. Other schools of thought go with the opinion that you keep on moving them. Some schools of thought just mention it in the Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah and don't mention it in other places, right? So they're all valid opinions, but the Hanbali school of thought goes with the opinion that in the tashahhud, the 4th times when the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes, that's only when you raise your finger. It's like as a manifestation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one.
My mistake was you said raising your finger when the name of Allah is mentioned.
Yeah.
When you read the Quran.
No, in tashahhud only. I made a mistake.
But all of them are valid, right?
Sorry?
All of them are valid, right?
Yeah, all of them are. Even if you don't, if you keep your hands straight, your salah is valid.
Do you know what's cool about is just you keep the finger up to your
No.
right hand?
Questions?
Tapping the shaitan with your finger.
One of the schools of thought go with that opinion, that you keep on moving your finger, and they say the wisdom behind that is that you're pressing the shaitan. Not the reason, the wisdom. There's a difference between reason and wisdom. Do you know the difference? Okay, the reason is why the ruling was legislated, and the wisdom is the fruit of that legislation. So let's say, why do we say alcohol is haram? What is the reason why alcohol is haram?
Allah said it.
Allah said it. That is the reason why we say alcohol is haram. The fruit for that, the wisdom for that is that it protects people's minds. Do you get it? That's how fiqh works. Clear? Performing iftirash while sitting. Right? Performing iftirash while sitting. What is iftirash? Is it clear? Is one clear? Issue? You look confused. So performing iftirash. Iftirash is an Arabic word. Iftirash is when you do it in your first tashahhud, meaning the tashahhud which is an obligation. And your obligatory tashahhud, you do iftirash, right? Iftirash is when you keep one foot up and the other foot, let me put it over here so that sisters can see. When you have one foot up and the other foot like that. Was that clear? Right?
You know?
Do you understand? Do you want to demonstrate?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I need to see it.
Oh, I can't see it.
Yeah, sure. Perfect. Show the sisters as well. Jazakallah khair. Okay, that's called iftirash. Just keep over here. Stay over here. All right. Then we have one more. Right. Sorry. Okay. This is when we'll come to the difference of opinions whether you do it for the 2 rakahs or not. We'll come to that. Right. So this is called iftirash. This position is called. This is for the first tashahhud. Right. First tashahhud. Then you have at-tawarruq. At-tawarruq. Right. This is for the last tashahhud. This is when you slide your foot in. Right. Yes. Right? Everyone can see him? Right? That's called tawarruq. Jazakallah khair. Right?
So they're not the same, they're different actions.
Yes, so when you're the way they describe it is that in iftirash you're sitting on your left foot. But in tawarruq you're sitting on the floor. Do you get it? And your left foot slips into it. Right? And now the issue comes that what do you do when you're praying 2 rakahs? And the last tashahhud of the 2 rakahs, do you do tawarruq or do you do iftirash? There's a difference of opinion from what I can remember, but I have to revise that. That the Hanbali school of thought goes with the opinion that you do iftirash and you don't do tawarruq. Right? You do iftirash and not tawarruq. Right? Was that clear? You get it? Meaning your behind is on your left foot. If your behind is on your left foot, that means you are doing iftirash. If your behind is on the floor, that means you're doing tawarruq. Right? Clear?
What about in the first and the third?
So for the 2 rakahs, tawarruq or iftirash?
Iftirash. It's okay. There's a very strong difference of opinion. Sure. Okay.
What was it?
And,
The first and third?
no, the first and third?
Oh, I thought that's what he asked.
No, he didn't ask that.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, when you're praying 4 rakahs, before getting up, you take a time to sit, right? Yes, that's called jalsat al-istiraha. Jalsat al-istiraha. The Hanbali school of thought goes with the opinion that's permissible. It's permissible. And they say the reason why the Prophet ﷺ did it is that he only did it when he got old and he needed time to take breath when he would get up from his sujood, and he would take a few seconds and then he would get up, right? That's why they say it's permissible for him to do that.
Is it something that really takes as a sunnah?
No. Permissible.
Yeah, he did that right.
Yeah, it's only permissible.
I have a question.
Sure.
Some people sit this way. Is that permissible?
Sure. No worries. Yes, that's also a recommended way to sit. That's also a recommended way to sit. Right? So you have three ways. You have a recommended way, a permissible way, and a haram way. Right? A recommended way, a permissible way, and a haram way. So I'll just do it. Right? So if I face this way. So this was iftirash, right? Clear? Can you see? Sister, see? Iftirash, right? This is called iftirash. This is called tawarruq, right? Right? These are both recommended ways to sit, right? This is also mentioned in some books of hadith that this is also a recommended way to sit, right? Sorry? I can't remember. I'll look it up. Thank you. And then there are permissible ways to sit. This is a permissible way to sit. This could be a permissible way to sit. The left leg up, right? Permissible way. Then there are haram ways to sit. The Prophet ﷺ said a person should not sit like this, meaning both feet up. Both feet up, that is haram way to sit, right? Both feet up. On the side, not in the middle, on the side, right?
So what about some people sit like with the 2 feet up?
Yes, that's permissible. I said that's permissible. All ways are permissible. There are 3 ways that are recommended, and there are a few ways that are haram. One of them is the way I mentioned. Sure. Sure.
I usually sit one of the first 2 ways. How to pronounce it.
Okay.
Word, but normally I sit that way, but here lately I had an injury.
Yes.
So what I do is difficult for me to do either one because it's like
Okay.
back here.
Yeah.
So what I do, either I do like this,
Yeah.
you know, because I can't put all the pressure right here, and then on the last, on the between them, I do like this.
It's fine. Completely fine. And you'll get rewarded as if you were doing it properly. Inshallah.
When you go down for the first rak'ah and the first sujood.
Okay, the jalsa istiraha. Okay, well, you mean the pause, right? I talked about it.
I thought you meant something else.
Okay, so when you have a 2 rak'ah prayer in the first rak'ah, or you have a 4 rak'ah prayer in the third rak'ah, right? When you stand up, there's something called jalsat al-istiraha. Okay, what are you talking about?
So you just did your sujood, you're coming back, and you're going to go down for another sujood.
Yeah.
So what is that sitting? What is allowed in that sitting?
That's a pillar.
In between, how do you sit?
Okay, you should say sit by iftirash, not by tawarruq. Tawarruq is only before salam. Sorry, my bad. I didn't understand you. My bad.
So when it says performing international sittings, for all sittings in general.
Yeah, and tawarruq is only for the last session. Yes. Good point. I don't know.
What about someone who don't sit on a iftirash at the last 2 rak'ah? So sometimes because you might have a pain in your feet.
Yes, so this is recommended acts, meaning anything that is recommended in Islam, you get rewarded for that if you don't perform that for a need. Right? Do you get it? So if there's anything recommended in Islam and a person wants to perform that, but he's unable to perform that because of a need, he gets rewarded for that. It is as if he did it, right? So let's say a person who fasts Mondays and Thursdays every week. It's a sunnah to fast Mondays and Thursdays. Every week he's fasting Mondays and Thursdays. And suddenly he gets sick, he gets terminally sick, and the doctors say you can't fast anymore. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward him for that Mondays and Thursdays because he had the intention. Do you get it? Questions? Moving on. Turning right and left during taslim. We mentioned that last class, right? That saying, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, the saying is a pillar. But turning right and left is a sunnah. Was that clear? Turning right and left was a sunnah.
So now I have a question. On the Salatul Janazah,
Yeah.
some people pray, they just do one salam, some people do 2 salam.
In our 4th class, we'll talk about janazah. Right? Then we have this recommended sayings when you pray. The recommended sayings when you pray. Anyone remind us a saying which is a pillar? Allahu Akbar for the takbirah. What else?
Salams.
Salams. What else? There are pillars, not obligations. At-tashahhud. Which one?
The last one.
That's what else? There's a very important one. Ibrahimiyya. What else?
Allow before changing it.
No, that's obligation. Fatiha. Fatiha is in. The what? That's an obligation, not a pillar. Right? Alright, there are some recommended sayings when we pray. The opening dua, which is called by many desis, what is called? It's called istiftah in Arabic, istiftah. But what do desis call it? Sana, right? They call it sana, right? If desis want to know what it's called sana. Istiftah. Let me write it. Right? Istiftah. This is our second class.
Every Sunday?
Every Sunday. And Saturdays we have the fiqh of purification at this time, at 2 o'clock.
This is for Ramadan.
Can we keep questions which are not related to the class after the class? Right? Thank you. The opening dua, which is called istiftah. What can anyone recite it to us? That's one version. So there are many versions. Allahumma wajjahtu wajhi ilayk. That's one version. The famous version is Subhanakallah bihamdik wa tabarak ismuka wa ta'ala jadduka wa la ilaha illa. There are many versions. Any version which is narrated by in the hadith, all of them are valid, inshallah. Right? Al-isti'adha. What is isti'adha? A'udhu billahi minash shaitan rajim. Saying A'udhu billahi minash shaitan rajim is isti'adha, right? It's in order. I'm going in order. So you say Allahu Akbar, then you do istiftah. You do the opening dua. Then you do isti'adha. Right? Then you do Bismillah. Right? Now the issue comes, when the Imam is leading, should he be vocal with it or should he keep silent with it? Both are accepted, la shak, right? But the Hanbali school of thought goes with the opinion that both of them have to be done in silence. And the issue comes with, is Bismillah an ayah? It's an ayah. There's no doubt it's an ayah. But is it ayah from Fatiha or not? Or it's an excluded ayah? Do you get it? So there's a huge difference of opinions between all four schools of thought, whether is it considered from Fatiha or is it excluded from Fatiha, right? Bismillah is a part of the Quran for every surah except for one surah. Tawbah, Surah At-Tawbah, except for Surah At-Tawbah. It's a part of every, it's an ayah from the Quran before every surah except for Surah At-Tawbah. So the whole issue comes, is it an ayah from Fatiha or not? And we'll go into a bit of detail so that you guys can have a taste of the differences of opinions and how they deal with it. So the first opinion, which they don't consider to be a ayah from Fatiha, they go with the opinion that when in a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when a person prays and he says Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, I say, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Hamidani Abdi, meaning he praised me. Right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's response after every sentence. And He does not mention Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the scholars say, if Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim was an ayah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have mentioned in this hadith. Right? And the other school of thought goes with the opinion that the Prophet ﷺ said, Inni utitu sab' al-mathani. As-sab' al-mathani, or he described Fatiha as a sab' al-mathani. Sab' al-mathani means seven sentences, right? He described Fatiha as 7 sentences. Let's count how many ayahs Fatiha is. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in, Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim, Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim ghayri al-maghdubi alayhim wa ad-dallin. This is an entire ayah. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim ghayri al-maghdubi alayhim wa ad-dallin. This is one ayah. How many ayahs? Where is the 7th? They say Bismillah. And the first school of thought interprets this hadith by saying that Salat al-ladina an'amta alayhim, this is an ayah. Ghayr al-maghdubi alayhim wa ad-dallin is an ayah. So it's like 7 sentences. So they cut that into 2, right? So this is just a taste of how scholars talk about and how they deal with proofs of different opinions. Clear? Right. Reading a surah after Fatiha in the first 2 rak'ahs. Reading a surah after Fatiha in the first 2 rak'ahs. Now, if we have more than 2 rak'ahs, then a person should not read anything after Fatiha, right? He should just be enough with. It is not even recommended to read for him to read anything after Fatiha if it's more than 2 rak'ahs, right? After the 2 rak'ahs, right? Okay, so which surah should a person read? Which surah should a person read when he's praying his fard rak'ahs, for fard prayers, not his nafil, his fard? That's no doubt. Right? So we're saying what's preferred, right? So the Quran is divided into parts, even besides the ajza, the chapters, it's also divided into how long a surah is, right? So the first 7 surahs are called as-sab' at-tiwal. The 7 long surahs, right? And then I forgot the name for the middle ones. And then the last ones are called al-mufassal. They're called al-mufassalat, which starts by Surah Al-Qaf and ends by Surah Al-Nas. They're all called al-mufassal, right? And then from those mufassal, there are 3 categories. There's tiwal al-mufassal, there's awsat al-mufassal, and there's qisar al-mufassal. They're the long mufassals, and they're the medium mufassals, and they're the short mufassals. The long mufassals start by Surah Al-Qaf and end by Surah Al-Naba, meaning Naba is excluded by the end of Surah Al-Mursalat. That is called the long mufassals. And then from the beginning of Naba to Surah Al-Duha, that's called the middle mufassals. And then from Surah Al-Duha till Nas, they're called the short mufassals. The scholars say that in Fajr, a person should read from the Tiwal al-Mufassal, meaning from Qaf to, not the entire thing, but he should choose a surah from these surahs, from Qaf to Naba. In Maghrib, he should choose from the Qisar al-Mufassal, from Duha till Nas. He should choose from those surahs. And besides those 2 prayers and the 3 other leftover prayers, remaining prayers, he should choose from the Awsat al-Mufassal. Was that clear?
So nothing from
that when a person is leading, it's different. He should be aware that there are people behind him that might not be able to stand with him. This is preferred, basically, right?
Can you repeat that? So Fajr is from Qaf to Naba, Maghrib is Naba to Duha.
All right, over here. So you have, let me write it in English. Right? This is from Qaf till the end of Mursalat. This is from Surah Al-Naba to Duha. Then from Duha till the end. Clear? This is for Fajr. Maghrib, the rest. Clear? The middle of Surah Duha.
There's a middle, it's included twice. Is it included in both the middle and the short?
Oh, sorry, okay. After Duha, this is after Duha till the end of. Sure.
When you say this and that, are you supposed to say before Fatiha and then before the next surah after Fatiha for all of this?
If you're starting a surah, yes. But if you're reading from the middle of the surah, no. Right? So when you're beginning, like if let's say you're reading Surah Al-Ikhlas, after reading Surah Al-Fatih, you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Qul huwa Allahu ahad.
Is there like a reason why they divided this?
Yes, it's the Prophet ﷺ, I think it's in the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ told people when you're reading Fajr, read from, which is what happened when some Sahaba would be very energetic and they would read long surahs. And people would have a hardship with that. So the Prophet ﷺ said that read from the long mufassals in Fajr, and in the other prayers read, and for Maghrib read from the, oh, I think I missed this. This is for the rest. And this is for Maghrib, sorry, my bad. Yes, so the Prophet ﷺ would tell them this is how you should read the Quran when you're leading, right? So it would be easy for people, because usually Fajr, it's known to be long, so you should lead from these surahs. And Maghrib is usually short, so you should lead from these surahs. Sure?
So if you don't know all of these surahs from the Muslim, can you just read them?
Yeah, you can read anything, even part of any surahs.
So this is only if you're reading the Salah?
Yes, it's recommended. If a person is reading, he should read from these parts. Oh yeah.
So is it recommended to read the first 7 or the middle from 7 to 18?
I don't understand.
So Qaf is 18, right?
Qaf is 18?
Is it not recommended to read the
No, it's not recommended, because if a person, I mean, it's okay to read, but a person, okay, a person, it's a sunnah to finish the surah that you read, right? So when you start one of these surah, you are able to finish them. If you start Surah Al-Baqarah, you won't be able to finish them, right? But it's okay if a person wants to read Surah Al-Baqarah, he wants to, change it up, mix it up, it's fine. But we're saying what's recommended. Sure.
What do you mean by mufassal?
Mufassals are, so you have Tiwal, which is the first 7 surahs, and there's a name for the middle one, but I can't just remember that name. And then you have Mufassal. Mufassal are the last part of the Quran.
It means the last part.
No, Mufassal means the divided up. So Mufassal is, so because there's so many surahs at the end of the Quran, that's why it's called Mufassal, that they're divided up so much. Yeah.
Is that called a wasl?
أوساط المفصل طوال المفصل قصار المفصل. Clear? Questions? Reciting the entire Salat al-Ibrahimiyya when? Reciting Salat al-Ibrahimiyya when? The entire Salat al-Ibrahimiyya. The last tashahhud. The entire thing. What we said was the minimum mandatory? Come on, guys. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. That's the least minimum a person should read. That's a pillar, right? In the last tashahhud. But reading the entire thing, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. What was the chosen version that the Hanbali school of thought chooses? No, come on. Recite the whole thing. So say it. Innaka Hamidun Majid. That's the preferred version, right? That's sunnah, to read the entire thing. The minimum pillar is that you say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Clear?
So this part is saying you say this in Salat al-Ibrahimiyya for the first tashahhud or the second?
There's no first, there's no Salah Ibrahim, nothing. It's not even recommended to read in
So this is for the
second one. The one which is followed up by?
I guess I'm confused by the rest. Reciting the entire, I guess.
So we said the minimum pillar is Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, meaning a person. That's what will make his prayer valid,
Okay.
right? But to do the whole thing is a sunnah. You get it? Sure.
So what about if we do only 2 rak'ah?
So we said we have the first tashahhud and the last tashahhud. How do we differentiate? We say the last tashahhud is always followed up by a salam. The first tashahhud is not followed up by salam. You get it? Clear? Then you have dua before sujood. What's the dua before sujood? اللهم إني ظلمت نفسي ظلما كثيرا فاغفر لي مغفرة من عندك. There are many du'as. One of these are prescribed that the Prophet recommended. And there's one, اللهم إني أعوذ بك من عذاب القبر عذاب النار ومن فتنة المحيا والممات ومن فتنة المسيح الدجال. So these are recommended. There's one minor opinion that also obligates this.
Where exactly did you read these?
After you've done. So I did in order. Right? So it's order. After Salat al-Ibrahimiyya. As I'm going in order. Oh, sorry. For sujood. Okay, my bad. My bad. Before the sleep. Sorry, my bad.
Is there somewhere we can get these du'as that are recommended?
Yeah, usually books like The Fortress of the Muslim, Hisn al-Muslim, they have all the adhkar. Clear? Right, now we have the permissible acts and the disliked acts. Right? Performing acts which are not from the standard acts of prayer. Right, Rizwan? From the standard acts of prayer. Now, what we mean by this, we had the pillars, we had the obligations, we had the recommended acts, right? These are all, a person is rewarded for all of them, right? He gets rewarded for all of them. If he does a pillar, he does an obligation, he does a recommended act, he gets reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there's some acts a person does not for the sake of Allah while he's praying. Does that nullify his prayer or not? Is it okay for him to do that or not? So you have two types. You have something you do which is an act of prayer, meaning you're doing an extra sujood, you're doing an extra ruku', you're doing an extra jalsa, you're sitting, right? An extra jalsa. What is the ruling of that? And what is the ruling of doing something which is not from the norms of the prayer? An act which is not from the norms of the prayer. So doing an act which is from the acts of the prayer, we'll come to that later, but I'll just have a quick elaboration on that. If a person does an act of worship, an act of salah, an added act of salah, intentionally it breaks itself, it invalidates prayer. Let's say a person does 3 sajdas. He does 3 sajdas, intentionally his prayer is invalid. If he does it forgetfully, his prayer is valid, but he has to make up for that by sujood sahu. Right? We'll come to all of that, but I'm just trying to, guys, imagine. That's for anything that's from the acts of the prayer, meaning increasing and adding an act which is already an act of prayer, right? Then you have acts which are not from the acts of the prayer, like let's say cracking your knuckles, right? These are not from the acts of the prayer. Looking at your watch, right? Opening the door, right? Fixing your clothes. What is the ruling for that? This is what we're talking about over here. Was that clear? Right? So slight movement for a need. Slight movement for a need. For the need of prayer or for general need? For general need, anything, right? If a person needs to move, it's allowed. What is the ruling for that? It is permissible for him to move, right? If a person needs to move for a need, slight movement, not excessive movement, slight movement for a need, that is permissible. And for example, turning off the cell phone. So if a person's cell phone is ringing while he's in prayer, it is permissible for him, and sometimes it could be recommended for him to turn off his cell phone, because it's a slight movement and it's for a need, right? It's a slight movement and it's for a need. Do you get it? Second is carrying a child or the Quran. Carrying a child or the Quran. Why did we mention carrying a child? Because the Prophet ﷺ held who in prayer? Hassan Hussein. They were on his back when he was praying. Yes, the daughter of who? His own daughter, his own daughter's daughter. So how many daughters does the Prophet ﷺ have? 4, 5, 6, 3? Isn't it a shame that we don't even know the daughters of the Prophet ﷺ? 4? How many kids? How many boys?
He had Austin and Ibrahim, but they passed those kids.
We're not talking about they passed away or not. We're talking about how many do you have?
4.
Boys?
Yeah. Boys he had 2, some say 4. Right? Qasim and Ibrahim, and some say there was a Tayyib and a Tahir, right? So for sure he had 4 daughters, right? Okay, what are those 4 daughters? I want them in order. Aisha, come on, she's the wife. Ruqayya, but what's the first one? Zainab. Fatima is the smallest. Zainab, then Ruqayya, then Kulthum, then Fatima. Right? Zainab, Ruqayya. I'll write it down. So this is an acronym that I help myself using it. I say Zarkam. Right? Zarkam. Zainab, Ruqayya, Kulthum, and Fatima.
Said he held his granddaughter.
Okay, so whose daughter did he held? Zainab's daughter. Zainab had a daughter. She was married to who? No, Fatima was married to her. But okay, her name was Umama bintu Abul As. Her father was Abul As. You don't need to remember these names, but Abul As was the husband of Zainab, right? And they had a daughter called Umama. And when Fatima passed away, later on, after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, by 6 months, Fatima passed away. And later on, Ali radiallahu anhu married Umama as well. Get it? Later on, after the death of Fatima, he also married Umama, right? So the Prophet ﷺ held Umama in his hands while he was praying, right? It was a slight movement. He didn't change his form of the prayer. He held Fatima, Umama, and he prayed. Carrying the Quran while praying, a very famous issue. Carrying the Quran while praying, right? The scholars say that if a person needs to hold the Quran, it is okay for him to hold the Quran. But if a person is praying in a jama'ah and there are people who are correcting the imam, there are people qualified to correct the imam, and you're at the end of the masjid, then you shouldn't carry the Quran because it's an extra movement which could change your form of the prayer. So it's disliked to hold the Quran if you have no need to. And just enjoying the following the imam is not a need. Is not a need. Clear? Opening the door. Okay? Opening the door. The Prophet ﷺ was once praying and Aisha knocked on the door and the Prophet ﷺ opened the door for Fatima. For Aisha, right? The Prophet ﷺ's house was smaller than this place we have over here, right? It was like 1/4 of this space, maybe, right? Very small house. That was his house, his dining room, his living room, his bedroom, everything was in that room, right? But now we have, mashallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with, multi-rooms. So if a person knocks on the door and you're on the second floor and we say, the Prophet ﷺ opened the door for Aisha, should we go down and open and you're still praying? No. That's excessive movement, right? That's excessive movement. This is a slight movement. So the Prophet ﷺ's house was so small that he didn't have to move. He could just open the door when he was praying, right?
So if you're next to your door?
Yeah, if you're next to your door and someone needs to enter, you can open the door, right? Slight movement for a need. Understood? Then you have counting the verses. The fuqaha, they talk about counting the verses. So sometimes a person is praying and he's reading a surah. He knows how many verses that surah is, but he does not know how many. He's afraid he might lose count. Especially surahs like Surah Al-Kafirun, right? Sometimes you miss how many. So if a person knows how many ayat they are, he can do 1, 2, 3. He can count them. That's movement, but that's for a need, right? That's fine. Yeah, you can count it from here. That's how it's like an actions movement. There has to be some movement. How would you move?
I don't know. I never did that.
Yeah. You're a hafiz, mashallah. Questions?
It's not related, but the joining of Islam from which hadith can they derive something like that?
So it's so one of the things we do in fiqh is analogies, right? It's called analogies. We say that the Prophet ﷺ opened the door for Aisha. Why did he open the door for Aisha? Because there was a need, right? Turning off your cell phone when it's ringing. Let's say that your phone is ringing while you're praying. I mean, if it's not ringing, then you don't do it. So there's no need. I mean, it starts ringing and it's going to annoy everyone, annoy yourself. Then you turn it off. Understood?
Sneezing, you sneeze,
Yes, it's fine.
What if you need to grab the
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, but it should be just slight, not too much. You shouldn't like take out a napkin and then let it go.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
While sometimes we're praying, we see people like really cleaning their nose.
Yeah.
Is that
No, that's not a need. That's not a need. I mean, if a person sneezes and then he just quickly rubs it off, that's fine. But if a person he has no need to clean his nose and he takes it out and he's like, Allah understand.
These are things for prayer, like front prayers, or is it more flexible?
It's more flexible for nafil prayers. It's more flexible for nafil prayers. So one of the things they mentioned for nafil prayers is that it's okay to drink water slightly. Have a small sip of water while you're praying, right? So because usually back in the day, people would pray long nafil prayers, right? Uthman radiallahu anhu, he finished the Quran in one rak'ah, entire Quran in one rak'ah, right? And so like it's impossible for him to keep on reading that much without his throat going dry or somewhere. So it's okay to have a small sip, not like chuck down an entire bottle. You have a small sip, right? It's okay.
You know how long it took him?
I don't know. Probably the entire night. If a person can read a juz in 20 minutes, it's easy to read a juz in 20 minutes, right? If you have 30 juz, how many minutes? 600 minutes. No, 600 minutes, right? Right? 600 minutes. How many hours? 10. No, 20 hours. No, 10 hours. Sorry, my bad. 10 hours. 10 hours. 10 hours. It's doable.
It was very strong.
Oh, their hearts were different. Yeah, our hearts we can barely do half a juz. The hearts were different. Slight movement is fine. But if it's excessive movement, if it's for a need, then you break your prayer and then so the issue is, can you leave your prayer without a need? Can you leave your prayer, quit your prayer without a need? It's haram for a person to leave his fard, the prayer, obligatory prayer, without a need. Right? It's a person who's praying and he's like, no, I'm going to pray later. No. You have to finish your prayer. But if it's a sunnah prayer, it's okay for him to break it. It's disliked for him to break his prayer. Right? Is that clear? Any questions on this? Then you have slight movement without a need. Slight movement without a need. The ruling for that is that it is disliked. It is disliked, meaning it's preferred for him to not do that. For example, turning the head. Right? Let's say a person is praying and he turns his head. Right? He turns his head a bit. That is disliked. But what if he turns his body? He breaks a condition. He breaks a condition. So turning the head does not break your condition of facing the Qibla, but turning your body breaks the condition for the Qibla. Was that clear? It's a condition. We said conditions are before the prayer. So before you start your prayer, you face the Qibla, right?
So if we're praying in Houston and we're praying towards the general direction, even if you turn a little bit, you're still facing the general direction.
Yeah, what we mean when you're completely swayed away from the Qibla. Yeah. Let's say a person was praying this way and he turned this way. But if a person turned his head, that would not invalidate his prayer, but it would be disliked for him. Yeah.
Would we reduce the reward of that prayer?
Yeah, definitely. Disliked actions reduce the reward. But permissible acts don't. Yeah. Cracking the knuckles, right? So if a person is praying and he cracks his knuckles, then that is disliked for him, right? Raising your eyes, right? If a person looks up, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that a person should not look up when he's praying, right? That's why they say it's disliked for a person to look up when he is praying. Where should he look? Right. So the scholars say he should look at whatever place is more comfortable for him. So if looking straight for him is much more comfortable, he should look straight. But usually, they say there's no hadith in this. They say that usually a person finds more comfort if he looks down, right? So that's why they recommend looking down. But if a person finds more comfort looking straight, then we tell him you should look straight. And except in one situation, if a person is standing in front of the Kaaba, he should look at the Kaaba. It's recommended for him to look at the Kaaba when you're praying in the Haram, right?
There's no authentic hadith or anything about
No, nothing.
It's not
No authentic nor weak, nothing. It's the fuqaha have derived that by saying that it's much more better for him to have khushu' and concentration when he's looking downwards. Okay, clear?
So then if you're saying that you concentrate better by looking straight ahead, what do you mean by raising your eyes? So if I concentrate better by looking straight ahead of me?
Rising your eyes is something the Prophet ﷺ told us not to do.
Like looking up?
Yeah, looking up. A person should not look up.
So the difference between rising your eyes and looking up?
Looking up, raising your eyes, same thing. By raising my eye, I mean looking up. Yeah, sorry.
Only exception is Kaaba.
Kaaba. So Kaaba, it's preferred for you to look at the Kaaba.
Is there a reason why we're not allowed to look up?
I don't know. There's a hadith that says don't look up, but I don't know the wisdom. Was that clear?
Yes.
Okay. Excessive consecutive movement. Excessive consecutive movement. So there are two conditions for this. It has to be excessive and it has to be consecutive, right? That nullifies your prayer, right? That nullifies your prayer. Let's say a person takes out his phone and he starts texting on his phone, right? That is excessive consecutive movement. That nullifies a person's prayer.
So what if you take out your phone and put it on silent? You have to look through, like, sometimes phones don't just have a button on the side that you can put on silent. You have to, like, go in and turn off the volume. There's a need to do it.
Yeah, so I would say that make it really quick.
But it's no, right?
But like, let's say if he doesn't know how to turn off his phone, he can like text someone like, "How do I turn off my phone?" And he's like,
It just takes more than just a second.
yeah, it's not about a second. It's like make it quick, like even if it's excessive, but if it's for a need, inshallah. So they say even excessive consecutive movement for a need breaks your salah.
That would break your salah.
It breaks your salah, even if it's for a need. So let's say a person, this is the examples they give. So let's say a person is praying and there's a kid next to him, right? And let's say a snake is coming up to that kid, right? Something that will harm that. The example they give is a snake or an animal, right? It's coming up and might harm that kid. So it's an obligation upon you to break your prayer and save that kid, right? Because it will be excessive consecutive movement for a need, right? So you break your prayer and you save the kid. If you go and save the kid without you breaking your prayer will still be invalid. Do you get it?
When you're praying, sometimes sway. People sway when they're praying for some reason. So is that excessive movement as well, or is that an alright thing?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, sorry. Sure. Yes. Yes.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Just to clarify, which question? For saving someone? Yeah, for fard and nafil. Yeah.
Okay. What about excessive yawning? Because some people yawn like, something like that.
What?
Excessive yawning.
Yawning.
Excessive yawning?
Yes.
Yawning is not considered to be an excessive movement.
Or burping. Like if you had
A person, first of all, a person should have adab when he's standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He shouldn't burp in his prayer because he's facing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If he needs to burp, he should make it quietly. Right? This is the whole point, that you're standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even someone who's cleaning his nose or something, you should realize and depict the fact that you're standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
In the case where you, like the kid with the
Yeah.
is there a preferred way of breaking the prayer, or you just
I don't know. Would you write that down?
Same people, you have to drag, actually do salam while you're standing.
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I'll look it up. Write down it, right? Yeah.
The question is like the method of breaking your prayer. How do you break it? Just say salam.
That's what his question.
Oh.
Next class, I'll get to it. Next class. Questions?
Yes, Dad.
Sure.
So I noticed closing the eyes is not listed anywhere.
Okay, so closing the eyes, the scholars say that some say that's disliked, some say it's not disliked. Some say if a person needs to close his eyes, if he's praying in a place where people are around him and that disturbs him, it's okay for him to close his eyes.
But is there a sunnah for this? Does the Prophet close his eyes or not?
The Prophet ﷺ told us not to close our eyes. It's not mentioned over here, but it's a good point.
So even though he said not to close your eyes, it's still...
But something that's disliked, not haram. Do you get it? If there's a need, it's okay for him. Clear? Is it clear or not? Seems you're not...
I just don't understand how can you explain how you derive dislike from hadith?
Okay, so this is something we took in usul. How do the fuqaha derive something that's disliked or something that nullifies your prayer? So they say anything that goes against the pillars or the conditions or the obligations of the prayer, that is something that nullifies your prayer, right? So for example, moving nullifies the fact that you should have tranquility and you should be. It's the whole purpose of prayer that you stand in a certain position, you pray in a certain way, right? And moving nullifies that. So you're going against a core pillar of the prayer. Do you get it? But closing your eyes is not going against a something fundamental in the prayer. Do you get it?
I get that. I guess that.
So that's why they consider anything that the Prophet ﷺ told us not to do while you're praying. If it doesn't go against a fundamental part of the prayer, then it's disliked. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Questions? All right, we have the last chapter, which is the nullifiers. Inshallah. Ready? Bismillah. Leaving out an obligation intentionally. Leaving out an obligation intentionally. Someone could give us an example of an obligation? Come on, guys, we took 8 obligations. An obligation. Dhikr. The dhikr for sujood, it's an obligation, right? If a person leaves that dhikr intentionally, then that nullifies his prayer. If he leaves it unintentionally, he has to make up for that by sujood sahw, right? Leaving out a condition or a pillar. Leaving out a condition or a pillar. Intentionally or unintentionally. Either way, it breaks your prayer. Okay, so let me just clarify this. So let's say a person is praying, and in his second rak'ah, he remembers that he did not do 2 sujoods for his first rak'ah. Right? So what does he do? He has to make up for that. We'll come to the slide where how we talk about how to do that. But my point is, if he does not make up for that and he continues his prayer is invalid. Do you get it? So for him, forgetfully leaving out that pillar is not enough for him to continue. Right? For let's say a person forgot the dhikr of sujood and he stood up and he's like, oh, I forgot to do the dhikr of sujood. It's okay, he continues his prayer. He doesn't go back to that prayer, right? But as for a pillar, he has to go back and perform that pillar, right? And we'll come to how to do that. I don't want you guys to be confused from now.
Right?
Yes.
For a condition or pillar or obligation, if you are in doubt, do you stay on the, if you're like not sure if you did it or not, do you stay on the side that you did it?
So it depends on what kind of doubt you have. So if it's like, I most probably did it, but I think I have a small doubt that I didn't do it, then you disregard that small doubt.
Isn't like, I'm supposed to play 4 rak'ahs, but I prayed 3.
Okay, so it depends on what.
I think I prayed 3. I'm not sure.
Okay, then you don't have a most probability, right? Yeah. It's like it's equal. Then you base it on what's certain, which is always the lowest number. Right? You'll base it on what's lower. Similarly, this fuqaha talk about tawaf. A person, usually it happens a lot when a person is doing tawaf, he misses out on how many rounds he's doing. Or a person doing jamarat, when he's stoning the shaitan in Hajj. Many people have, they don't know how many stones they've thrown, so you base it on the lower. But what happens? Many people have waswas. They it's like, he's 90% sure that he did it. But he has a 10% doubt that he didn't do it. So we say disregard that 10% doubt because that's from the shaitan. Right? Clear? Questions? So leaving out an obligation intentionally, leaving out a condition or a pillar, intentionally or unintentionally. Right? mispronouncing a word in a way that changes the meaning. Mispronouncing a word in a way that changes the meaning, right? So you have two types of mispronunciations. You have in a way that changes the meaning and a way that does not change the meaning, right? So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Fatiha says, Sirat al-ladhina an'amta alayhim. What does an'amta alayhim? That you have blessed. Like, so when we recite the Quran saying Sirat al-ladhina an'amta alayhim, the path that you have blessed us with, right? The path that you have blessed us with. So if a person changes that and says Sirat al-ladhina an'amtu alayhim, what does it mean? That I have blessed, right? And that changes the meaning drastically, right? It changes the whole meaning. So if a person mispronounces a word in a way that changes the meaning, that nullifies his prayer. If he knows, yeah, obviously, all of them, any responsibility in Islam comes with knowledge, right? Is that clear? But if a person makes a mistake which does not change the meaning, let's say Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, he says Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. That does not change the meaning, right? So that is wrong, but it does not nullify his prayer. Do you get it?
So his prayer is sinful? Did you get sin for that?
If he did it intentionally, yes. If he did intentionally, his prayer could also be nullified. I'm not sure. Adding a pillar intentionally. Adding a pillar intentionally. Anyone want to give an example? 5 rakahs. Making 5 rakahs, making an extra sujood, right? This is adding to be more specific, adding an act of a pillar, not a saying. Right? So the fuqaha differentiate between repeating Fatiha twice, even though it's a pillar, and adding an act of a pillar, which is an act, adding one of those. Do you get it?
Yeah, so which one is this?
An act, not the sayings. So if a person repeats Fatiha, his prayer is not invalid. His prayer is valid, right?
So say you're doing 4 rakah prayer, and you're not sure on the third whether you've done 3 or not, and you go down to
3.
Sure. So then you add an extra
Rakah.
So that's not the same.
No. This is intentionally.
Well, intentionally.
So in that you're not adding a pillar. You're not. You're making sure you did 4. Good one. Good question. What were we saying? Yeah. So if a person, for example, repeats tashahhud or repeats Fatiha, that does not invalidate his prayer, right? But if he repeats a pillar, which is an act, then that invalidates his prayer. Was that clear? Talking while you're praying, right? Talking while you're praying. So if a person walks by, he's like, how's everything? And you're like, alhamdulillah, it's fine. Then that invalidates your prayer, right? What's for iftar? Samosas, invalidates your prayer, right?
What if you read louder, right? So you're praying ahead and you hear someone calling you, and you read louder to tell them that they're...
So you're not talking.
You're not talking, but you're communicating on some level.
No, but you're not talking.
So that's
yeah, it's fine. So the Prophet ﷺ, once he was praying, and the whole issue comes if the Imam cannot stand while he's praying. I mean, if he's praying while he's sitting down, how should the people behind him pray? Right? Because the people behind him are commanded to follow the Imam, right? So the fuqaha talk about if he initiates his prayer while he's sitting down, then the entire jama'ah should pray sitting down, right? And if he prays while he's standing up, then in the middle of the prayer he sits down because he couldn't continue, then the jama'ah still stands up, does not sit down, right? So the Prophet ﷺ once started his prayer sitting down, and the people were standing up behind him. So he told them to sit down. Is that clear?
Should a person stand and lead Salah?
It's not recommended, but from someone like the Prophet ﷺ, it's disliked for him too. He should not be put forward to lead prayer.
Guys like that, and a person that's not able to do any of the pillars or obligations, is it disliked for them?
Yes. So a person, if he, let's say, we can't read Fatiha.
Yeah, I guess the read is so bad that
he should not lead prayer. Definitely not lead prayer.
What about if you lead khutbah? So some of us are very eloquent speakers, but they can't recite Quran.
Really?
Is it sunnah for the person who gives khutbah to lead the salah?
Yes.
So what happened in that case?
So there are three types of reciters of the Quran. A person who is very beautiful, he fulfills the tajweed, everything. And the person who recites the Quran but does not perform tajweed properly, but he does not mess up the meaning. Right? And there's a person who messes up the meaning. Right? So if a person messes up the meaning, then he should completely be, he should not lead at all. Yeah, even if he's the khatib, he shouldn't lead the prayer. Even if he's the khatib, I mean, he should not be giving the khutbah in the first place. Then you have someone who is reciting the Quran and he's not messing up, but he's not fulfilling the tajweed parts of the Quran. Then it's okay for him to lead. And if someone who has beautiful voice and tajweed, he's the one who should be preferred and put forward.
The times of the Khalifa, they usually the Khalifa would be the
Yes,
Imam,
yes, yes.
They would do it.
Yes. Yeah, so the Khalifa would be the one who takes Jum'ah, Salat al-Eid.
He's saying even if they can't stand up,
they would continue.
I don't know. Write it down. I don't know. Then you have performing the salam before the imam intentionally. Perform the imam before the salam intentionally. Performing the salam before the imam intentionally, right? So if a person gives the salam before the imam finishes intentionally, that breaks his prayer.
Following the imam, like while he's making the salam and making the salam at the same time.
Okay, so that was a question that was asked last time, and I didn't see the brother who asked me. So when the imam gives the salam, there's a preferred way, there's a haram way, and there's a permissible way. So the haram thing is you do salams with him, right? He's saying salam and you move with him, not follow him, with him. That's haram, right? In any act of the prayers, it's haram to be with the imam. So you don't go with the imam, you follow him, right? You go after him. And as for giving salams, the preferred way is that you start your salam after the imam has finished both salams. So if he does Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, that's when you start. But it's okay to start your salam after he's finished his first salam. So if you go Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, it is okay for you to start your salam. Right?
So he's saying performing salam before the imam, intentionally just salam. What if you stand up from your ruku' before the imam?
So you come back.
That doesn't nullify your prayer.
No, it doesn't nullify prayer.
right? But there's any act.
That's adding.
Huh?
Adding an act. Not,
You can't perform any act with the imam.
oh, you mean if I stand up with the imam intentionally?
If you intentionally stand up before the imam in ruku'.
I don't know. I'll look it up. Put it up. I think, I'm not sure, but I think from what I remember, that it nullifies your prayer. But I'll confirm for you. It's a very good question. Very good question.
What about the extra rak'ah you make if you mess up something and before the salah? Can you do it if you're getting the...
Give me an example.
Like I mess up maybe rak'ah after I came late and I want to make it up in the extra salah, extra rukn.
Okay. You made an extra sujood.
Yes.
And you're not following the imam. You made an extra sujood and you only got to know it after you finished your prayer? That's what you're saying?
No.
I think he's saying he joined the imam late. The imam says salam, he continues with one rak'ah, right?
No, I think the sujood, the extra sujood you make.
Sahu?
Yes.
Oh, so we'll come to that the person who prays behind the imam has no sujood sahu. He only follows the imam. So if he doesn't mess up and the imam messes up an obligation and he does sujood sahu, you do sujood sahu with him.
So this happened one time. The imam was leading and the mic...
Anything with imams, we'll do it in the imam side. So I'll explain it from the beginning so you guys will have... Yeah.
What if you can't, so performing the salam before the imam, what if you can't see the imam, right? And he says salam. After he says the salam, you can start doing yours?
Yeah. Give me an example.
You're in like the 7th, 8th row.
Okay.
Right? And you just hear him.
Okay.
But he says salam, but he hasn't done his salam.
So we said that turning is a sunnah. Him saying it is a pillar. Keep up. Questions? Laughing. And in Arabic, there are different types of laughs. So there are laughs which are kind of like giggles, and then there are laughs where you have a sound when you laugh, right? So that's called qahqaha in Arabic, and that's what's intended over here. Meaning, if a person smiles while he's praying, or laughs but there's no voice, he giggles very subtly, then that doesn't nullify his prayer. But if he laughs in a way that breaks his prayer, in a way that he pronounces or he has voice coming out of his mouth, then that nullifies the prayer. Was that clear? Excessive consecutive movement, we talked about that in the previous slide. And then you have eating and drinking. Eating and drinking while praying. And we said that the nafil prayer, it's okay to drink small amounts of water to keep yourself hydrated. Any questions?
What if you have a gun before you start that?
You have to throw it out. You have to throw it.
Put the prayer and take it out?
No, you take it out in tissue.
You realize it after you start prayer?
You try to not. If you could keep it inside of your mouth until prayer finishes, that's preferred. But if that's going to annoy you, then break your prayer and get something and start over.
Sometimes, like when you burp, sometimes food comes up. So like back, like you said.
They say that he shouldn't eat that, but sometimes it's hard, so it's okay. It's okay, inshallah. Questions?
Do we skip over dislike acts?
So we said that the slight movement, which is for no need, that's disliked.
That's it?
That's it.
I have a question. Sometimes the residue of the food in the mouth.
Yeah.
Is that?
They say that you should if you have something to take it out with, you should take it out. If not, then it's fine.
Even if you swallow it, it's not going to affect.
You should not intentionally eat that, but if you can take it out, you should take it out. Questions? Sure.
So, in terms of bodily fluid, blood, maybe mucus from the nose, like is there a certain point where you actually nullify your?
If it's excessive, yes. If a lot of blood comes out, excessive is something that comes back to the person himself, what he considers to be excessive. There's no defining of that from the Sharia. So they say urfan, what is considered by norms an excessive amount, right?
Blood and mucus of the nose, those are different, right? I mean, would they really be the same for both? Because some people might be having more than mucus coming out.
I don't know. This one, write it down. Mucus. No. If a lot of it comes out.
What did you do?
Yeah, it doesn't nullify. Blood for sure. I know blood for sure. If it's a lot of blood, then that breaks his prayer. For mucus, I don't know. Questions?
Can you repeat that for the blood?
Excessive blood bleeding nullifies your prayer because it nullifies your wudu. Okay, question. Who attends the purification class? Purification class. Okay, did Shaykh Hassan talk about what is considered a large amount of water and what's considered a slight amount of water? What's considered large? Qullatain? 51 gallons, right? He said 51 gallons. Now when whatever is below 51 gallons is considered qaleel, a small amount of water, right? So over here when we say drinking water, well, someone's praying nafil namaz, do we use the same criteria? We say if a person drinks 45 gallons of water, it's fine for him? No, right? So it's different, right? Fiqh is all knowing about the small differences in issues. So we say that's a different issue, or we it's a different issue.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. Oh, Allahu Alam. Questions? We're done for today. Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, so inshallah, I would really recommend and ask you guys the next class, please have everything revised because we're going to do a practical example. And I want everyone to have everything cleared out. So when we do the practical performance of prayer, I don't want to keep on asking and making sure that everyone knows the difference between pillars and obligations. That should be clear for everyone, right? So make sure you revise them. If you missed out the slides, I'll show it to you right now. You want slides you're talking about? First today?
No, the previous.
Okay. Let her finish, then I'll give it to you. Oh, yeah.
Another question. So I was listening to a lecture, and they said that it's preferred to recite the Quran order. So if you recite in your first rak'ah, part of the Surah Al-Naba, and then the next one you should do a surah after.
Yes, that's something that the fuqaha mentioned, that if you read, then you should read in order, meaning you should read a surah, then read a surah after that. But if a person reads a surah before that, that's fine. It's preferred.
Okay, so it's not. Is there a hadith on that, or is that just preferred?
It's just preferred. I don't know if there's a hadith or not.
Is there a minimum you have to read?
One ayah. To fulfill the sunnah, one ayah.
Doesn't matter how long the ayah is.
No. To fulfill the sunnah, one ayah. So if a person reads Qul Wallahu Ahad, he has fulfilled the sunnah.
Any portion from the surah that you mentioned, the middle of itself, any part of the surah during?
Part of it, yes, it's okay. It's okay. Questions? No, it's fine. It's fine. Take your time.
Is there any dua made after the Fatiha in the surah?
No. No. So you're either an imam, or you're either praying by yourself, or you're either praying behind an imam, right? So these are only three situations a person could be praying in. So if you're the imam, you should pause after reciting Surah Al-Fatiha before you read the second surah, because it is recommended for the person praying behind you to read Surah Al-Fatiha. And he is only recommended to read Surah Al-Fatiha when you stop, right? Let's say you're the imam and I'm praying behind you, right? So you read Surah Al-Fatiha. It's not a pillar for me to read Surah Al-Fatiha. So it's a pillar for the person praying by himself or praying as an imam. It's a pillar for these two people, right? So if you're leading and I'm praying behind you, it is recommended for me to read Surah Al-Fatiha when you're quiet. Right? But if you're reciting the Quran, I have to keep quiet and listen to your recitation, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنُ لَا فَأَنصِتُوا لَهُ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا لَهُ وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنُ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. That whenever the Quran is recited, keep quiet and listen to the recitation. Imam Ahmad says that this is for the prayer. This is for the prayer. Meaning when the Imam reads, you should keep quiet and listen to the Imam. If he's quiet, you read your Fatiha.
If you start reading Fatiha, right? So he's done Fatiha, he takes a break, you start reading Fatiha, but then he starts with...
You stop.
You stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Between the Fatiha and the next surah you read, saying Ameen, is that a sunnah?
Yeah, it's a sunnah. So yeah, we didn't say that. That's a sunnah, to say Ameen loudly. Yeah. For the Imam and the person praying behind the Imam. I think the only school of thought that comes to my mind is the Hanafis, that they don't recommend raising the voice. Yeah, they don't do Ameen vocally. But the other three schools of thought all say that you should raise your voice.
Is there a link?
Ameen for?
Like
whatever is normal. Whatever fulfills the word Ameen.
If you have to lead the salah, let's suppose for husband wife, the husband has to lead the salah, but they cannot fulfill like bending down or something, and are they still allowed to lead the salah?
Yes. So is it a nafil or a fard?
Fard.
And can she perform it?
Yeah.
No, but still, the leading of a woman it's not valid. So he leads in whatever situation is, because that's the best possibility. Yeah.
Is it better just to pray? Then if he has to sit, does she sit too then?
Write it down. I'll confirm that. I'm not the thing. I think I messed it up, but I'll confirm it next class. Because there are two situations: when the imam starts by sitting down, and whenever the imam sits in the middle of the salah. When one of them, the people behind him sit down. I'm not sure which one, but from what I think it is that if he starts by sitting down, then the people behind him also start by sitting down. But I'll confirm that next class.
Same way, so if he's sitting on a chair, everyone needs to be
So sitting on a chair is not recommended. A person should not sit on a chair, right?
It's not recommended, but you're allowed.
So if a person, it's either he can stand up and not make sujood, then he can sit on a chair. But if a person can do sujood and not stand up, then he should do sujood properly and not do it on a chair. Do you get it? So when he's doing his Fatiha, he should sit on a chair, but when it comes to sujood, he should perform the sujood. Do you get it?
So when there's two people and one of them is chosen to be the imam, instead of being behind, they kind of are all next to each other?
Yes. From what I can remember, they should stand next to each other. Right. And we'll come to that when we're doing the imam thing.
I was going to ask for the husband and wife, how does that the same?
She stands behind. Yeah.
So, like, at school, at your rate or something, when a Muslim, like, you have non-Muslims there, I'm not non-Mahram there. Can you lead a non-Mahram, just you and her?
So yeah, a person should be very careful. If it's in a very secluded room, then he should avoid it. Not for the sake of the prayer, but for the sake of fitna, right?
There's nothing wrong with that prayer.
No, prayer is valid. Prayer is valid, but he should not do that because there's fitna, right? If there are people around him, then that could be less of an issue.
Wearing shoes while you're praying.
It's fine.
Even if the imam wears.
These are not pertain to pillars or obligations, so it's flexible.
Is it a condition that the shoes have to be clean, right?
Yeah, no impurification, no impurity on the shoes.
So let's say you have impurity, like you step in
Yeah.
dog feces on the
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah.
Is there a general rule on how you can clean that?
Yes, you wipe them, like you go in the sand and you rub them until yeah.
That's enough.
Yeah.
I know it's a thick class, but do we cover khushu' at all?
No, but I think I wanted to talk about khushu' next class when we do the practical example. So I'll just briefly talk about it. Khushu' comes from the heart. As for the tranquility, we talked about fulfilling each pillar. That comes from your limbs, from your actions, right? So that's one of the differences between khushu' and what is called tama'nina, which is tranquility, right? We'll talk more about it in our class.
I guess you're saying we're talking more about it, but so like you're praying, you're trying to focus, and then all of a sudden you realize when the imam said Ameen, you were reminded.
Okay, yeah.
Does that nullify your?
No. As long as you're fulfilling the obligation, the pillars and the obligation. So there is a shaitan, which his job is to mess up everyone's prayer. That's his job. He has a name, I forgot his name. And it's his job. Whenever a person starts to pray, he starts messing up his prayer. So the fuqaha talk about how to have a better prayer. One of the things they say that a person should come to the masjid early. He should pray 2 sunnah rak'ahs before he starts praying. Because if you're coming in a rush and you just join the imam, you're not going to be mentally ready, right? So if you have 2 rak'ahs, you're ready, you start with the imam. That helps with focus of the prayer. And so on and so forth. It's a struggle. There's no one who has a complete prayer besides the Prophet ﷺ. There are very few people who can manage to not be swayed away even for a slight movement in their prayer. Questions?
What if, after you start praying, you realize that you didn't make wudu,
You break your prayer is completely invalid. You go and make wudu. And if it's after the prayer, you still have to repeat it.
We talked about looking up during Salah. What if one's it's better to follow the sunnah, right? In any case. So wouldn't you say that following the sunnah by looking down where the Prophet looks is better than not looking up?
So there's no hadith that says the Prophet looked down.
There's no hadith
No.
that tells. So you can look anywhere you want as long as you're not looking up.
Yeah.
Or you're changing it, I mean, unless it negates a condition or...
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we going to go over Salah with the Jama'ah?
Yes, yes, inshallah. Yes, we will, inshallah. You done?
Yes.
Okay. You want the 2 slides? Which one do you want?
For the first, I want the first week or Saturday.
First week, okay. Could you write me your email? I'll email to you. And you want today's as well? The first one?
Today's.
You got it? Okay. Yeah. So these are still a prototype. We're still working on improving them. So within 6 months or a year, we'll have them printed out in books, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Anyone questions? No more questions, right? Alhamdulillah. Assalamu. We said leaving a condition.
In that verse.